StreamYards. Hello, hello, hello. Sorry. Technical difficulties here. I'm not seeing anything from my StreamYard side, so I'm going to reboot and try to come back in. Sorry about that. Hello. Oh, I can see me now. That's a little better. I couldn't see I couldn't see anything. But anyway, makes it a little more difficult to do what we're trying to do each week. So my name is John Kulas, and I am a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology. And every week I hang out here on YouTube with the intent of helping other people who might be interested in leveraging what I'm calling single platform project execution. So, using your analytical platform not just to do your analyses, but also to communicate. And so, communicate by wrapping your analyses and describing those analyses. Now, I've been having all kinds of technical issues, not with R, the platform that we're primarily using, but just with my computer. So we'll talk a little bit about that here tonight. Occasionally, I'm joined by some collaborators on these projects, but we just want to be available as a resource if there's other people interested in this, but maybe are have some questions or curiosities, or maybe there's just some other minds that you want to bounce ideas off of. It's kind of why we're here. So, uh, thanks, Alicia. Yeah, so I have had some hardware, I believe, issues as well as software issues. So the software is StreamYard, which has been acting a little funky for the last maybe month or so. And so those of you that are watching this and are familiar with YouTube, that's the predominant software that streamers use. So whatever you like to watch, if there's a live aspect to it. It seems like this piece of software is pretty popular. I It's been a little wonky to me. Unfortunately, it's a web-based piece of software, so there's nothing I can do for a local installation. But um, the last few weeks, we also have had this issue I call clipping, and I have new hardware for my internet, and so did a little testing late last week, and fingers crossed that hopefully the clipping part is at least solved. Now, there's going to be some other issues that obviously that I'm going to need to address here, but one at a time, I guess. So we hang out here every Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, and we make ourselves available if there's anyone interested in doing this and they have maybe a sticking point or maybe they just have a question. And in addition to the fantastic static resources that are available online, we wanted to have this kind of interactive. The metaphor we're using is an academic office hour, so we wanted to make ourselves available if anyone wants to knock on a door and come on in and ask a question in a non-threatening type environment. So, what we've been doing in lieu of someone coming by and asking questions is we've been taking a look at just specialized features, focused capabilities of these authoring platforms that we're using. And so the authoring platforms are extensions off of base R. And the primary one that we've been using is Quarto. The slides that you're looking at are authored with Quarto. But today, what we're going to take a look at are appendices that can automatically be appended to the end of your document. You know, I never realized that that word appendix or appendices, as it relates to documents, probably is a derivative of appending, the process of appending. So putting it at the end. Who knew? I guess, wow, look at that. Revelation for tonight. Now, normally I don't do this, but that title slide that we had, there's actually a artist that's attributed to this. And so I thought it was just cool. A tiger driving looks like a 57, 58, 59, 60-ish era Corvette convertible. Um, And normally I'm just grabbing a random image from the internet. So if you'd like to check out that author and some of his other things, I put a link down there. And I'll try to do that whenever possible. If I see if I'm grabbing something that has an obvious attribution, I'll try to be a little better about doing that. That's one of the things I guess maybe we could spend one of these weeks on, like what the best way to incorporate that in a document is. The best way is not to use a footnote on a second page, so not even the page that the image is on. It, there's reasons that I did that. Title pages are a little different in these Reveal JS slides that we've been authoring through Quarto. And so rather than spend a lot of time amending that title slide, I decided to just take the easy route. But maybe one of these weeks that'll be something fun to do instead of just checking out one of these capabilities in the form of a package or extension. Maybe we will talk about just stylistically how to do something like that, an attribution if you want to make an attribution. But we're going to check out this package that appends or adds appendices to the end of your document, which there's a couple of case uses that I can think, and I think the extension author also noted those same case uses. So prior to that, let's get into our transition for what happened last week. I didn't get to see the wonderful intro video. We'll see if I can see Rocky and Bullwinkle here.
Well, in our perennial battle between good and evil, it seemed that last time evil in the form of Boris Badenov would score an upset victory. For Boris, disguised as Rocky himself, was determined to steal the nation's entire supply of upsidasium, the anti-gravity metal.
Boris, darling, the whole thing?
Of course, Natasha. Remember our motto, if it's worth stealing at all, steal it all.
And with the help of the magnets fastened to his shoes, Boris proceeded to do just that. He carried bar after bar of upsidasium to a rear window and loaded them into a fleet of trucks waiting outside.
But how do we keep people from getting curious about trucks?
Look at Neyman trucks.
Clover Blossom Skunk Farms.
See? Nobody will come within miles of us.
Oh, that's very good, Badenov. Very good indeed.
Did it? Thank you, Mr. Big.
Yes, I'm glad I thought of it.
Clover Blossom Skunk Farms. That's very creative. And yes, I saw the video now, so apparently I just needed to restart StreamYard. But I'm going to have to reach out to them because it has not been stable at all. So the clipping aspect that I mentioned, so that's what Mr. What is it, a Pomeranian? I'm not, they're very cute dogs and they've been very prevalent recently in terms of when I'm on the internet. I don't know why, but I see a lot of these little cute little dogs. And they always seem so well behaved when they're getting groomed. Like it really isn't bothered at all. He looks like he's smiling. Maybe that's why they're so prevalent, is because they look like they're smiling. Anyway, the clipping that was happening the last couple of weeks, again, fingers crossed, but I think that aspect hopefully is taken care of. If I do start the clip, maybe somebody drop me a note and let me know, and then I don't know what I'll do, but try to figure it out. I used to love problem solving. It used to be one of my favorite things to do, but the technology problem solving, I don't know about that. So last week what we did was we looked at a few different options for incorporating image information in the form of largely icons or emojis into our documents. And so the impetus for this was a newer capability that I came across when we started talking about and exploring AI integration within our workflows. That was a package called Iconify. And Iconify, again, I think I've said it over the last 2 weeks now, but it has a lot of stuff in it. It has over 200,000 different things that you can incorporate into. And this is one of the caveats that we have with the Iconify package is it's operative right now only within HTML type documents. That being said, it's fantastic. So we contrasted that with some legacy packages that I had been using, predominantly Icon and Icons. So those are two different packages, but the Icons package is the current version of the old Icon package. And the old icon package, the reason that I'm mentioning both here is that still has some capabilities um, that were depreciated when it evolved from icon to icons, kind of like Alien, right? The movie went from alien to aliens, or did it go the other way? I forget. It went one of those ways. Anyway, icon went from singular to plural. And what I tried to do here was I tried to kind of demonstrate some of the features, capabilities, or maybe even limitations of these different packages. The main thing I guess that we were focused on was the multicolor layering and integrity of the icons within the Iconify extension itself. So the extension gives us access to this other standalone, as many things do with R and these authoring platforms that we've been talking about. There are people working on open source projects that have nothing to do with R, have nothing to do with Quarto, but Quarto interested individuals have seen that going on and they've linked to it. Typist is an example of this, for example. There's so much of that. So there is this Iconify kind of project that's going on independent of anything we're doing, but there's also now an extension that gives us access to those a little easier. And the R symbol that you're looking at here, the main difference is the coloration. So the color in the top one, the one that we took from the Iconify package, is a fantastic representation of the actual R symbol that the R overlords are in charge of. I guess there is a proper name for those individuals. At the moment, it escapes me. Probably because I'm thinking about overlords. There's another package that's on CRAN called Font Awesome, and this package gives us access to predominantly Font Awesome icons. And I mentioned last week, but this was a go-to for me for corporate brand type information. And so I don't think I'm going to use it as much anymore now that I've found Iconify. But this is, and the other thing about these packages is they are they don't seem to have a lot of recent activity on them in terms of support. Now, with the emo package, that thing just is kind of rock solid. I don't think it needs a lot of support. It's just sitting out there, and it's a fun way. It's a good way to access emojis. I've been using it for a long, long time. It hasn't had anything done to it for 6 years, but it works great. Other than you're not going to find brands in there. You're not going to find corporate logos in there. You're going to find emojis. And so as I was looking for images that kind of reinforce what we did last week, choosing R I think was fine. You can see that the colors were limited in the Font Awesome and Icons package in terms of being monochromatic with the color. You can choose it. So I chose the blue, and I didn't spend a lot of time on this either. I didn't search for the proper blue or the proper gray. I just kind of took one. And so I rendered one in blue, one in gray. Those also have size. Those also have size capabilities built into the functions themselves that access the images. So it's really easy to size your Iconify image, or size your Font Awesome image, or size your icons image. Emo package, there is not a sizing option, but CSS works on it. So I actually created some CSS, some customized styling sheet commands, just a single command actually that just enlarges any element that's targeted. And so that's why we get the bigger trademark symbol here. And the trademark symbol is just the closest thing that I could think of in emoji form that kind of reflects a little bit of what we're talking about with the R symbol. So anyway, so after looking at all of these, there are some reasons to use some of these other packages. The icon and icons packages, if you're still using R Markdown, that to me those work great there, and they also have some animation capabilities that might work a little better in R Markdown. We didn't fully test that out. We did see some animation that was capable using icon within Quarto documents. We didn't go backwards with R Mark. I haven't done anything in R Markdown for quite some time now. But so the reason you might want to keep those, the reason you might not just want to write those off completely is if you're dealing with different document formats. And tonight, I think tonight's a good example of that, because what we're going to be talking about, I believe, in terms of use cases, is probably technical reports. Um, and technical reports historically have been authored in a Word document or a PDF type hard copy, easily accessible format. And so not all the iconify images aren't going to render properly there. Um, the typist is not going to help you out in that realm either. We tested that out last week. However, Font Awesome works fine. Emo works fine within those different applications. So I'm going to keep those kind of in my toolkit, but when I'm doing, especially these weekly sessions, I think I'm going to rely a lot more on Iconify and the repository of packages there. These medals that you see, these are just kind of subjective in terms of what I would go toward. Iconify, I think, is just fantastic. It's great. The types of images, the rendering of them, the crispness of them, the integrity to what it is that they're representing, just fantastic. Now they say it's said that there's over 200,000. There's a lot of there's not a lot. There's substantial duplication in there. So for example, the R symbol that you're looking at, there's a few of those that are part of that 200,000. The gold star medal is another Iconify object that I took, and again, the sizing of that's quite easy. So there's links to information on each of those here. The Font Awesome link, I already kind of highlighted it a little bit, is a little bit different because the other ones link directly to how to access the package or how to access the extension. The Font Awesome, the Font Awesome GitHub page I didn't find as helpful because it's devoid of these sorts of capabilities within the Font Awesome command itself. And so you might want to play with the size of it, as is altered here by height or width. You might want to play with the color of it. You might want to play with, you might want to give it a label. And we tried that a couple weeks ago as well. So I don't know why, but these sorts of amendments aren't available. I couldn't find them on GitHub, and so that's why we're linking to the Crayon PDF there on Font Awesome. All the rest of them are linking you to the source sites that you need to go to in terms of accessing those. Okay, so that was last week. This week, we're going to take a look at what I'm calling auto appendices. And so these auto appendices, we'll see in a second here what those do. But the two use cases that I thought of, and I think these are in the repository as well. The first one that immediately came to mind to me was technical reports. Now, I'm an industrial psychologist. I kind of cut my teeth before I was a professor. I was conducting what are called localized validation studies, and so we do a lot of testing. We do a lot of testing in workplace applications, and so what I would do is I would run a little research study, and evaluate whether the scores from our tests were going to be useful for businesses. And frequently that manifests itself in the form of looking to see if scores on your assessment are related to something of value within the workplace. And we call that validation. We're validating the thing that you want to give to usually people before you decide whether to hire them or not. So those are called validation studies, and those validation studies would be documented through a technical report. Now, technical reports also document the development of those types of assessments. And so in both those applications, there is a quantitative component to it. The quantitative component can get complex. It can oftentimes it can be quite simple, just simple correlations that you're looking at. The structure of technical reports is a little different than the structure of a traditional paper as authored by a psychologist. We, as a discipline, we're beholden to the APA publication manual. I got one sitting here within arm's reach of me. And that publication manual tells us how to write things like manuscripts intended for publication. Now, I'm not sure if, I think technical reports probably are in there. My friend Amanda, so she was an office mate, I guess, of mine. She had an office next to mine at the university where I was at the longest as a professor. And when we got this version of the APA manual, I remember or no, she got this one and wasn't so happy with it. And the one I got, I don't remember if I bought it or someone gave it to me, but it was spiral bound. So I actually and she really liked the spiral bound one, and I didn't care. So I traded with her, and now I'm kind of regretting it a little bit. So Amanda, if you're watching, I might sneak into your office someday and steal back my spiral bound. It's probably an old version now anyway, so it's probably not something that is up to date. So what I'm looking for here is I was going to do a quick look and see if there are technical reports in here. We usually, as psychologists, we usually go to this for academic papers, either in a classroom setting or if we're trying earnestly attempting to publish the results of a research study. So there are definitely there's an other types of articles section here, 1.06 in this version, but it's definitely more tailored toward the publication process and classroom applications. Anyway, that's a big aside, just to give acknowledgement that these types of reports, one of the reasons that I appreciate them and enjoy them is they're not necessarily beholden to this. So I always told my students with technical reports, have fun. If you want to use a style guide like the APA, you can go ahead and do that for how to reference something, how to write a number early in the sentence versus middle of the sentence, how to refer to an ungendered object. Do I say he, she? Those sorts of decisions. You can use a style guide for that. But with your tech reports, have some fun. Put a cover page on there. Have some color. Like, use different fonts. And so the other aspect of a technical report that makes it quite different from a normal paper that a student might write or that a researcher might write is that it's not at all uncommon. And as a matter of fact, I used to ask for this for the results of analyses that aren't central to the paper but are peripheral. Just throw them in an appendix. I can't tell you if there's any former student of mine that's watching this, they're laughing right now because they probably heard me say just reflectively as an answer to a question, throw it in an appendix. They probably heard me say that 20, 30 times. When I'm teaching a class where there's a technical report as an aspect of the product that they're supposed to produce prior to receiving a grade, my answer typically to should I include this is just throw it in an appendix. It's a technical report. I have technical reports that are hundreds. I think I have one that's over 1,000 pages long, and the majority of that is appendices. So I'm just appending the results of analyses. And so the one that I think is over 1,000 pages long was exploring something called measurement equivalence, and I was conducting analyses that are known as differential item functioning analyses. And there were probably hundreds of items, and there were also many, many different source countries that these items had been administered to. So I had to do pairwise comparisons across each of those countries for each of those items, and it got massive. Now, when you're talking about the results of something like that, you're going to present summary results in the body of your document. You're going to say 80% of these analyses look great, 20% didn't, and here's what's in common. Here's kind of what looks like is going on with the 20%. Or something like that. However, you did all these analyses to get to that 80 and 20%. don't throw them away. Put them in an appendix. Just throw them at the end. Don't worry about formatting. Great thing about appendices is formatting doesn't matter. Just throw it in there. There's very little chance that anyone is going to want to look at this at some point, but you did it and it was relevant for the project. Go ahead and throw it in an appendix. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a Quarto extension that takes scripts within a document that you're creating, and instead of echoing that at the current place of the document, it's going to echo those at the end of your document in an appendix. And so this to me is potentially useful for those of us, those of you who might be writing a technical report. And so if you have a professor like me, or if you have a supervisor, coworker who says, let's just throw it into an appendix, this might be helpful. Now, it's probably not going to do exactly the formatting that we might want, and so we'll take a look at that. But the other thing, and I think I got this from the package author, the other kind of use case for this, and I'm sure there's others, but one of the other use cases might be for classroom applications. So if I am teaching R and students are handing in assignments, this might be actually a decent place, decent way for the students to show their work with their professor without muddling up kind of the assignment itself in terms of turning it in. Now, there's different philosophies that professors have on things like homework assignments for these quantitative type classes. I typically would split up a grade, so I would give full points if the answer is right, and then if the answer is not right, you look at the process and you see if is there just something goofy in the code or something, so you could give partial points. Now this would be great for that, because instead of having assignments with a bunch of output as well as stacked code, the code itself can just go at the end. The other reason that's helpful is, students can think they're being sneaky, but typically who knows with AI, but typically they're not being as sneaky as they think they are. So one of the things that students in the social sciences would always do in these quantitative classes is they would try to just they wouldn't know exactly what the correct answer is or what the portion of the output is that is the correct answer, so they just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall. So this to me is one way to kind of get around that. So if the code is appended to the back of the document, then the space in which the students are entering the answer shouldn't be as cluttered. It should be a little, it should focus them, I would think, a little more on just giving the proper response instead of using that old student trick of, I'm just going to give them everything. By the way, that sometimes work in those quantitative classes. It never worked with essay responses. I don't think in 20 years, if I had a long form answer to a question, and I used to do this, the longer you wrote, generally speaking, the more trouble you got yourself into as a student. You talk yourself out of a proper answer. So that strategy, it's not the best strategy. But one way to help students kind of not fall into that strategy, to me, might be to use something like this. So let's talk about it. That's enough abstract stuff about these. Let's actually access this hyperlink and see what we have here. And so the extension itself is called Code Appendix. And what it does is it moves the display of code chunks to an appendix at the end of these documents. It should be workable in the 4 major document types that Quarto is known to, that Quarto currently supports. So there's a few things here we'll probably come back and, oh, he says use case too. Maybe I got that from him. Homework assignment, technical, non-technical, blog post. I guess I didn't think about blog posts. Um, does anyone blog anyway? Is that still a thing? Blogging? So I guess it could be used there. Uh, there is, and so I did follow up with this. There is a GitHub um, kind of thread where they talk about someone that wants to, someone that has a, uh, that someone that has a desire to do something like this. And this was from a couple of years ago. And so this person created this extension that does it. There's another way to kind of like anything with R. There's multiple ways to do this stuff. There aren't a whole lot of capabilities here built in other than the basic appendix, which is fine. To me, that's kind of probably a sign of I appreciate that. So I appreciate that we're not overloaded with options here. So I'm going to go ahead and now we've done this over the course of a few different weeks. So hopefully, if you've been watching along, or better yet, participating along, you've kind of become a little more familiar with how to access these extensions. The first one we tried, I didn't know what an extension was. I didn't know what it was doing. I didn't know how to use it. But it's certainly become pretty second nature at this point. It's well integrated within RStudio in terms of what we have access to within RStudio. So we have talked about this as well. With Iconify, we don't need to add a filter. We don't need any extra YAML specification. With this one, we are going to need the more traditionally encountered amendment to our YAML. And so let's just do the installation first. We will see if I can use one of these older. I don't think I can. We're going to have to create a new project. And again, when we're using these extensions, it's going to be, you probably could use these extensions without using a project. But these projects, where do I want to put this? But these projects, these extensions are going to work better if you're within a project directory. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do three things at once here. I'll put it on my desktop again. I probably have 5 temps in my desktop already. We'll call it appendix, I guess. And I guess one thing to check with when you're doing this, I just had a project open. I've seen errors before when people have multiple, you can have multiple RStudio sessions open. That's never something that I'm interested in doing. So I just double checked there that I didn't accidentally do that. So let's consider ourselves to be creating a technical report. So I'm going to do a Quarto document. We'll start with a PDF maybe because we don't usually do that. And we'll call it Tech Report. And the author is wonderful YouTube people. And then this, it knows me at this point. I don't like the visual editor, so I usually have that off in my RStudio. Those of you that have been following me as well, or following these weekly sessions, I've talked a little bit about Copilot. I finally had to turn it off this week. It was really interfering. With my ability to write, and so it was. It started to concern me because I had a really long document, and I don't always knit or render frequently within these long documents, and so it was possible that something was being ghosted prior in my document and I wasn't aware of it because stuff was just coming up, and I had weird hash marks that were kind of appearing where I didn't want them, and double ticks and some other. I had to turn it off. I gave it a go, but I gotta turn it off for now. It's great for code completion. for me, it has not been great for writing yet. So let's just render the default document here, see if it works, and we'll call it tech report. I don't like spaces. I don't like special characters in file names or folder names. So we'll be careful about that. Kind of an old lesson learned. I don't think I'll ever break out of that. So it did look like, just out of this corner of my eye there, I saw some error messages. It doesn't look like it's anything too terrible because we got our PDF tech report here by wonderful YouTube people. Now I was going to say, let's see if we can get a YouTube symbol in there, but it's not directly what we're doing tonight. So I guess maybe we'll come back to that. So as a tech report, we already have 2 bits of code here. And I'm going to set those both to true. We want to echo those. And 1 + 1 by default is already being echoed. We could also set global options instead of chunk by chunk. But chunk by chunk is fine as well. Let's do something a little more interesting as long as we're doing a tech report. So let's say, let's make some technical reporty information. Let's do, this is a very serious report about, should we do penguins? Let's do penguins. And we'll find a picture of a penguin since it's a very serious report. And then we'll probably use the Palmer Penguins package. Let's see a nice picture of a penguin here. They all look like nice pictures. This one's pretty cute. I kind of like this other one better. I like this one. I don't know why. The blue. It's got a very nice color blue. So I'm just going to copy that image address. And the way to call these out is consistent across formats here. It's just that exclamation point, square bracket, and then in parentheses the location of your image. Now that can be local, or it can, as long as you have an internet connection, you can grab it from the internet as well. We could play with the size, we could give it a title, we could cross-reference it. Again, for us, I don't think we need to do that. 2 times 2. I don't remember that. Is that what it said? I thought it was, I guess it is 2 times 2. I guess I took off the 1 + 1. So we're gonna go ahead and let's do some exploration in the Palmer Penguins. That's a still very popular, kind of more recent. When I say more recent, maybe within the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. Let's look for some nice graphs that we have and just steal them. I kind of like these overlapping histograms. Now this one caught my eye. It looks like there's a psych package function called pplot, I think. And this looks a little like that. But it's from the Palmer Penguin set itself, which is promising. So we shouldn't need too many other packages here to build that. What the heck is that coming from? Let's see if we can do this. So it's the penguin set, and then select species that's in there, body mass. That's an interesting filter. Ends with millimeters. G galley, so I don't have that. So GG pairs, it looks like, is the command that it's using. Let's try it. I'm pretty sure I don't have GG alley. You can see on line 21 it's being called out here. Let me check my packages and see if I do. Yeah, I don't think I've heard of that. Let's see if it's on CRAN. It's on CRAN, so let's go ahead and try it. So again, hopefully I'm not clipping here too much. Oh, that was quick. Okay. Do I need anything else? It looks like we are piping using the, I'll just use tidyverse. I used to install Magritter, which I think is where that piping initially came from, but it seems to be more popular now to use the tidyverse. And so I'm nothing if I'm not a conformist, so I'm just doing what everyone else does. Let's see if we get a pretty picture. Oh, font. So the error looks like a font configuration error. So I'm not really so worried about that. Now, okay, so our package is going to be great here. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these warnings. We do not need those. It's okay to take a look at those messages and warnings for individual feedback, but that's not something that I'm going to be interested in containing in my technical report. Now, one of the things that we can also include in the technical report that I think is helpful is on my weekly sessions, you see that I put information about my version of R, and that is something that could be useful. I think we'll put that in our appendix as well. But so let me get rid of the messages and warnings here. And we'll see if that cleans up our output just a little bit. And I might switch this to HTML2 just so it renders a little quicker. The PDF renderings tend to take a little bit longer than the HTML renderings. Let's see. Yeah, so that's a lot better. So there's my code. And we have this second bit of code. We should also, let's add a meaningful second bit of code. Let's see what we can do to these penguins. We could do the overlapping histograms, I guess. I don't know. I know there's other people that have done interesting stuff with this. Let's see if we can find a different picture that we like. Those violin plots, I've been seeing a lot more violin plots recently. APA, I don't think likes violin plots. Look at that. That is cool. What is that? That's going to use some packages that we don't have. Trendiest female baby names. All right. Well, it's definitely not penguins. We have to come back to that one. I'm not saying it's informative. It's just cool looking. So I'm not being critical. I don't mean to be critical. The people get a little snobbish about visuals, and so they can get a little harsh. That one has too many packages. Let's just do a correlation. So I'm just gonna, all right, we got our pretty visual. We don't need people's help beyond that. So let's do actually I'm gonna need to take a look at that package. Or that object. So I'm gonna load in the penguins data set just so I can kind of see what's in there. And I want to see what's quantitative in here. So we have numbers, characters, numbers. So we have a lot of numbers later. So let's do just body mass. And what should we do? Body mass and oh, but that's in a, I'm sorry, there's two. I didn't realize that. So there's two data sets there. There's a longer one with the same number of observations and a shorter one. So build depth, flipper length, body mass, those all should be quantitative. So I'm just going to do a correlation there. So let's do core, and I'm not going to attach it. So we'll do penguins, build depth, and Now I don't know if they have any. I'm not sure if they have any missing data in there. Normally, when we do a core command, we do use equals, and then, boy, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've done that. Okay, there it is. So we'll have another bit of code there that we can echo. And again, I'll try this again with an HTML file once we get our information. And maybe I'll show a bit of inline code as well, how we would normally kind of report that in the technical report. So we wouldn't just have this number here. What we would do is we'd probably assign it. So I can say pen core. And then in my document, I can say the correlation between, what is it, build depth. I'll put it in ticks so we can see what that looks like. That kind of gives a little indication to the reader that this is an object that's relevant for our data. And build length is or was, and again, the publication manual can help us here with what we're supposed to use. Tense is not something that I've tended to be very careful with in my writing. But they do tell us what we should actually be used. And I'm going to use a bit of inline code here, and we'll just call up that object. Now, we should probably round it because it's going to come in. It's going to come in, if you look here, it's going to come in as this big number. If I round it to 2 decimal places, it should come in nicely. We can also say the number of penguins that we have. So the correlation between is, and then we'll put R equals, and then I'll do an N. So N should be N row or N rows, I forget. I'm using my console now just to verify. So I think it NROM. NROM. That's a non-romantic comedy, I think is what I'm thinking. So nrow is the command that I was thinking about. So then we should, and again, you can see where stacking this inline code can start to be a little messy, but our expectation is, and if you have dynamic data, this is how you'd want to structure this. The correlation between build depth and build length is, and then it's going to report our pen core object, which shouldn't be echoed from this since we're assigning it to an object and not calling it out. It should just calculate it. And then we have the number of rows here. If we wanted to do a subscript on that, we could. That should be penguin subscript. And let's see here. Let's see if that works. And then we'll try to render it in HTML, and then we'll add the we haven't even gotten to the extension yet. So, didn't like something. Kulas misspelled. I spelled it N-com the first time, or what did I do? N-rom. Then I did I don't know. My spelling's off tonight. I have a spelling issue. Again, it's taking, I'm not sure why it's taking that long. It didn't render my subscript, so we'll take a quick look at that. It did give me a nicely formatted correlation as well as the N. What am I missing about subscripts? Is it tilde? I thought it was underscore. It is tilde. So it looks like tilde is the operator that I want. And I put underscore. Silly me. Tilde, let's try that. And I'm going to change it to, we shouldn't change 2 things at once, but I'm going to see if we can render that as an HTML file and see if it speeds things up a little bit. it really is thinking about penguins here. I don't. This is it's taking longer than I expected it to take. Whoa, our penguin looks a lot better in the HTML format. Uh, so does our graph. And yeah, so we did get our subscript on the tilde. The font, I really don't like this font. We would go in and change it, but that's not the point of today. The point of today is to take a look at that extension, which I'm sure I lost at this point. So I'm going to pull up tonight's slides, and it's the 5th of August already. Sheesh. And I have bookmarks, or I have, not bookmarks, what do you call them? Hyperlinks throughout here. So I'm going to steal that Quarto add code for installation, and this should, if I look in my files folder here, there is now, because we've done a PDF as well as an HTML, there's quite a few different files in here already in our project folder. If I go to my terminal and paste in that Quarto command, should be able to access the extension. And if you watch in my files pane here, we should get an underscore extensions folder that shows up in there. Yes, we're very trustworthy as always. Yes, we want to continue, make your changes. Nah, we don't need to see the documentation. Okay, so there's the extension that's added. In order to access that extension, we're going to use this filter command. And I think I should be able to just put it at that level. We'll see. We'll see if we get an error. And then again, there's on that on the link to the on the repo itself, there's information about a different way to actually do this. So I do like how the output itself is stacked. And then here's the code appendix. Look at that. How awesome is that? Let's add, we don't have a table of contents here. This would be nicer with a table of contents. So I'm going to do table of contents, Quarto. Whoops, gave me an autocomplete there. I think it's just TOC. But the specification is one header over, so that means we're going to, on line 4 here, I'm going to do a couple of hard indents. We'll try that again and see if we get it to. Now that we have our appendix, and if this truly is a technical report, another important aspect of that technical report is a table of contents. So it is something that we do want to, there it is. Look at that. That's great. Now there's nothing scrollable here. I'm guessing because it's such a small report. We have a picture, we have a graph, and we have some very rudimentary analyses here. But I do like how the code is appended. It's appended in the order in which it's executed, it looks like. So let's test that. So I have Palmer Penguins. I have the graph code first, and I have the correlation second. See if we can change that here. Now, we should put some chunk labels in here too. Let's see what else we can get in there. I'm a little curious. So I switched the ordering on the code chunks here, and our expectation is that the appendix, whoop, didn't like, oh, I have to move my library commands up. I should just put those in a separate chunk. I don't know what the best practice is on that. I will usually leave them in the chunk where they're relevant, but that does make them a little harder to find. I forgot to put the warnings on this. Interesting. So it did. So why did it do that? Again, this is an extension. They're it's treating some of the pieces, or it's treating some of the code within that chunk as separate, which is interesting. It didn't do that. It didn't do that when these were in different orderings, right? Could be because I don't have the warning and message set to false. Should have just done it in the YAML, I guess. But it's I didn't expect to see different chunks or different bits of code isolating. There we go. Okay, so maybe it was just a message, or, or we now have just one bit of code for the entire chunk that we have. Now, one of the things that would be nice is if we could number these, or if we could have labels. So I am going to put a chunk label on there and see if that does anything. Now, the old Markdown syntax is just, it's been a while since I've used it, but I believe it's just comma and then call it something. And that's not a pretty pick, that's our correlation, isn't it? It's a very pretty correlation. And I'm looking to see if that does anything here. We may have to use a more explicit label, and it's possible that just won't come through. But it would be nice to have that label in the appendix. Yeah, it's not coming through. Let's try PDF before we mess with this a little bit. Let's try PDF and see. And let's see if we can get some more, just a little more oomph to the appendices themselves. I almost I'd almost like to have separate appendices for different bits of code, if that's an option. But again, if you do so for a technical report, I might want to play with this a little bit. For a school assignment, I could see this really being super helpful, especially if you're a professor and having them submit it in HTML form like this. The clipboard here is great. You can just try this on your own computer, and that's fantastic. Now the PDF table of contents command, I believe, is the same, but if this throws an error, we'll have to take that off. PDFs, I think by default, the table of contents is going to be rendered. So I'm not sure. And again, I have all kinds of specialized fonts that are. I love that. Look at that table of contents. Woo! I love that. And then it's searchable here on the left. Man, I really like that. The only drawback here with the PDF format is the copying of the code chunks, which is enabled in the HTML format. But man, I really like that. I mean, this honestly is kind of the start of an actual table. This is the start of an actual technical report. Like this could, I know it's silly. There's a picture of a penguin there. It's not silly. It's very serious. But you know, this is a good way of getting there. Now the code appendix, we would want to actually probably start that on a separate page as well. So we'd want to introduce a hard page break there. But again, I'm getting a little specific about it, and I don't know if that's the intended purpose. So there is, I think it's a he. Looks like a he. He's got a beard, so beard and mustache. So we're gonna guess he. Who is this guy? C.L. Roberts. Christopher Lloyd Roberts. Thank you, Christopher Lloyd, for doing this. It's pretty neat so far. I mean, we're just checking it out for the first time, but seems like something that is useful or could potentially be useful. Let's see if we can get a label in there, maybe. Curious. So features, let's look at the features. Instead prints them all together at an appendix. So again, that's something that we might want to alter a little bit. Code appendix title. So we could change that. Let's maybe do that. Now, where the heck do I put that? I'm I don't think that's a first level one. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but we should get an error, so let's just try it. And he might have, let's see if he's got examples that we could steal. There we go. So he does use those as first level headers, first level YAML indentation. So we can call it Penguin Appendices, or Penguin Appendix, because it's only one. Code be here. Yar. Is the R for Pirates resource still popular? Does anyone know? If anyone knows, drop me a comment. Because when I first started teaching this stuff, that was students seemed to like the idea of it. I don't know how far they got into actually using the resource itself. It was kind of a good idea. I think I might leave it in PDF here. I like that. Penguin appendix code be here. Yar. I don't know why I'm not getting the dotted line there. That's just kind of a style, probably decision. I'm guessing we could override that. Looks like it might be level of heading here. So that we have a first or second level header for technical reports. Actually, if I did a first one, I'm guessing that might look a little different. I cannot spell tonight. So we're a little over my intended hour, but I think I just want to check out a few more things on this. I'm not sure if it's a capability that we would come back to frequently, but again, in the, yeah, it looks like it was just a heading level thing. So the Penguin appendix is coming in as a first level header, and so that's the distinction here. You know, the one thing that I would like to play with, but I don't think I'm going to be able to play with it without making a lot of mistakes right now, is just adding other appendices and seeing how those interact with each other. So let's take a look at some of these other options that we have. Appendix header level, so that's going to be, that might be something that affects that dotted line, I'm guessing. Now you can also append this into a script file, which is pretty cool. So maybe we'll try that. Let's see what he says here. Force a page break to display on a separate page. Yeah, we already talked about that. We want to do that. So how do we do that? To an appendix at the end of the document, force a page break in the QMD. Okay, I'm not sure how we're going to do that. It kind of depends on, well, it depends on what we're actually using here. If we're doing a PDF, I think that command is new page. If I use the right LaTeX command here. So let's, again, it's coming in at the very end of the document here. We'll try a new page command and see if that does anything. And then we'll try HTML, and then what else do we want to do? If this new page works just at the end of the document, that's fine. I don't know how references might mess us up. Maybe we'll put in, yeah, that worked. Should we try references? I'm kind of tempted to try references, but we're already a little bit over. Let's try, so the new page is fine. New page isn't going to work with if we change this to HTML. But I'll just leave it in for now. It should just render as it's seen, / new page. That command isn't meaningful. as we're producing an HTML file, or as the browser is trying to interpret what to do with that. Interesting. It just oh, you know what? There's no pages on HTML anyway. So, but it's interesting. It didn't say anything about that. Interesting. Okay. But but it, I don't know why I wasn't thinking that HTML files don't have pages just as a standard HTML file. So we'll go back to PDF and then let's check maybe just a few more things out. Oh, code appendix file. I think we should check that out. So that is another way. Again, if you're a professor, an educator, and you maybe want to leverage this in a classroom application, I could see maybe wanting the students to turn in, just a actual code file itself. I don't know why, but the a capital R on those scripts, I'm just so used to seeing it. It doesn't matter, but I kind of like that. So we'll call it penguins, and we'll look in our files here within our project directory and just verify that there's no penguins script here. There isn't. So now one of the things I'm curious about is if it appends to the back as well as writing that script file, or if it just writes the script file, or if it doesn't do anything. We'll see. It's thinking a little more on this, but it looks like I have something there. It did still give me my appendix. Now we can turn that off, but we also now have a script file. Look at that. That's great. Oh, labels. The only thing we don't have yet are chunk labels, to see if we can force those to come through a little bit. Oops, that's that might give us something that we don't want to see. Hey, look, AI knows that I'm using Quarto. Label. This isn't going to work. It's going to do the same thing that we tried before. I'm pretty sure. Now, the other thing we could do is we could just be a little better about commenting within our code chunks, which usually I do make copious use of comments, and that should come through. But again, that's something that you would have to, if you were using this in a classroom application, you would have to tell the students would have to be instructed to do that, and that, yeah, you know how that goes. So yeah, so that label didn't work. It should be this. These two labels are competing with each other. They should have the same effect. Maybe I should take that off. Let me take it off. It's possible it's conflicting. That's the old R Markdown kind of structure for a code chunk label. Those are nice, by the way, if you use this outline feature in RStudio. If you have a huge script, it's one way to navigate that. But let's say first homework assignment. And I guess if you were structuring this as an instructor, you could kind of give them empty code chunks like this. I don't know. I mean, I never got to the point of getting my in-class students to use R Markdown, which would have been the route that I would have gone at that point in time. Because again, we didn't start using Quarto until Quarto wasn't available until a couple years ago, and I stopped being a full-time professor. It was like 3 years ago now. Sheesh. Still feel like I am one, kinda. There's times where I don't actually feel much like a professor. Yeah, so that would work. I don't, it doesn't. It's not going to show up in the table of contents, which would be nice. Um, but it's one way to get around if you were using this probably more in a student context than as an actual tech report uh, for a project that you're trying to document and communicate with other people. But okay, cool. So that went, sorry, it went a little longer than I expected, but pretty neat capability there. Um, Unless someone drops a comment and says, "Hey, what about this?" I probably move on to a different topic next week. However, I'm always willing to look into something a little more in depth if there are people that stumble across this and see maybe an application of this that I didn't see or am not thinking of. Otherwise, be on the lookout um, for a new topic next week to take a look at. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.